Ikki is a lonely, miserable, pathetic loser who was bullied for being the weakest in his academy, but he eventually managed to rizz up and clap all the baddies in school and defeat a bunch of overpowered mages. On a certain day, a newscaster on TV announced that the princess, Stella, has arrived in Japan and enrolled in the prestigious night school, Hagen Academy, with an all-time high score. Ikki woke up to see Stella, the pink-haired princess, being given the Beyoncé treatment on TV, so he turned it off like a miserable, jealous bitch before putting on his uniform and heading to school. Stella arrived at the school that morning in a Porsche car and was greeted by the chairman. As Ikki made his way to school, he thought about how the world had established a hierarchy based on talent, and how it's noted that the talentless could never beat the talented elites, but wondered how true that claim was. He then remembered how, at a younger age, he was advised by some old turd not to throw away the frustration of being the weakest loser in the world, as it was proof that he hadn't given up on himself yet. He then dramatically pulled down his hoodie and summoned his sword named Intetsu. As he did his best Samurai Jack impression, he thought about how special humans like himself called Blazers could use their souls as power sources for their weapons and fight with magical power. He recalled how Blazers who were approved by the international organization were called Magic Knights, and claimed his dream was to become one. Ikki ran back to his dorm room, but realized that someone had stopped by. He went in and saw Stella in her undergarments, but before she could freak out, he stopped her and said he'd pretend he didn't see shit. The dumbass then told her that he'd strip as well, so they'd be even, before lifting up his shirt to reveal a set of finely chiseled abs that had no business being on a piece of dog shit's body. Princess Stella freaked out anyways, and gave him a big slap as she screamed. A while later, the current director named Kurono talked about how Hagen Academy used to be the top school at a prestigious tournament called the 7-Star Tournament, but said that recently the school received crappy rankings, so she took the chairman position to restructure the academy. She then faced Ikki, who still had the scar of Stella's slap on his face, and brought up the incident.
Relax.
Ikki tried to explain that it was an accident, but she called it shit, since he not only saw her body, but showed his off to her as well. Soon, Stella entered the room, so Ikki immediately bowed his head in apology and explained to her that it was an accident. Stella asked for his name, and when he introduced himself, the told him to commit seppuku. Ikki tried to bargain for his life, and they argued a bit before Stella snapped and manifested her magic energy. Kurono didn't want any of that smoke, so she left, and Stella threatened to burn the dumbass pervert to cinders. Stella walked towards him covered with her powerful flames, with full intentions of roasting his balls off. But Ikki stopped her by calling her beautiful. Stella's face turned red, and her flames went off. But when she accused him of breaking into her room, Ikki told her it was his own dorm room. Kurono came back and informed them that they were roommates, and they both screamed in shock. Ikki asked Kurono why the school paired an A-ranked student with a failing student like himself, and Stella was surprised to hear that he was repeating a year. Ikki told her without a hint of shame that he was an F-ranked loser, whose physical ability and magic level were way below average. The chairman added that his ability scores were at the bottom of the barrel, so he was given the nickname Worst One.
You weird.
The chairman then said she paired them because of their opposite standings at the school, and Stella tried to debate the decision, claiming Ikki would do something creepy to her, but Kurono told her to f off. Ikki and Stella argued for a bit before Kurono suggested they crossed swords to determine who was in charge at their dorm room. After a bit of horsing around, they both agreed, but Stella added the condition that the loser of the duel would become the winner's slave for life. When it was time for their duel, Stella swore to crush Ikki and walked through a hallway filled with ass-kissers as she headed to the practice arena. Inside the arena, Ikki was with Kurono, and he told her that he needed to beat Stella to prove he could hang with the top dogs at the 7-Star Tournament. A perky school journalist named Kagami, as well as a bunch of other students gathered at the stands to witness the ass-whooping Ikki was about to receive. Stella arrived at the training ground and asked if he thought hard work could defeat talent, while remembering how she'd only been recognized for her talent and not the work she's put in. Kurono then reminded them that their mock battle poses no physical harm, before telling them to deploy their weapons in its illusion form. Ikki summoned Intetsu and made a stance, while Stella summoned her own sword in a similarly dramatic fashion. The battle officially began, and Stella charged at Icky with her flaming sword, but he sidestepped and dodged her attacks. She asked if Icky only planned to run away, but Icky acknowledged the hard work she put into her swordsmanship. The next time they charged at each other, Stella was shocked to see that he used her move. Stella asked how he stole her move, so Icky explained that he got good at copying sword techniques because nobody ever taught him anything. He then charged at her and tried putting her down with her own flurry of attacks. And after she evaded them, he revealed that he was using his sword technique named Blade Steel. After a failed attack from Stella, Icky landed a huge strike, which everyone thought had ended the match. But the attack didn't do any damage to Stella. Icky claimed she challenged him because she knew his sword couldn't hurt her, and she agreed to that claim before adding that she needed to beat him to prove there's more to her than talent. Stella then summoned flaming dragons from her sword and attacked him with it. But Icky activated a technique called Ito Shura that boosted his speed, allowing him to avoid her attacks. Icky then used what he called his noble art, which he explained was focusing all his life energy into a single minute and going all out. After dodging her huge attacks, Icky leaped into the air and claimed he'd defeat her strongest with his strongest before knocking her ass out with a sword strike. Icky passed out after Stella fell, and he was declared the winner, to the surprise of everyone on the stands. Later at the hospital, Kurono then explained to Stella that even outside of the bedroom, Icky was a one-minute man. So his technique drained him for the entire day. Stella asked how Icky was F rank despite being that strong, so Kurono explained that knights were ranked based on blazer skills and not sword or martial arts skills. She added that no system could properly assess Icky and explained that even though Icky's chances were unfairly stolen, he never gave up on himself. Kurono then advised her to follow Icky, promising that she'd gain something from it. Stella returned to her dorm room and saw Icky sleeping. She couldn't stop herself from feeling up his body, and when she touched his abs, she got overwhelmed by a wave of magical energy. When Icky woke up, Stella apologized for looking down on him. Icky reminded her that she was now his maid, but instead of asking for lewd services, he ordered her to be his roommate and get along with him. After bitching about it for a while, she agreed and made him call her by her given name before sharing a fist bump with him. A few days later, Icky bonded with Stella after a morning jog and gaslighted her into having an indirect kiss with him. Icky then revealed to her that his little sister, Shizuku, whom he hasn't seen in 4 years, would enroll in the academy that day. A while later in class, their homeroom teacher named Yuri, who looked like she'd vaped all night,
Burnt chicken nugget.
welcomed the new students to class and reminded them about what Kureno said at the entrance ceremony. Kureno's message was that for the first time, all students would participate in selection battles for the 7-star tournament, and the top 6 among the winners would be selected to represent their school. Yuri then informed them that the selection battles would begin the following week and that all the information they needed was in their email. The princess of dumbasses, Stella, raised her hand for a question, and Yuri, who, despite her crackhead look, was convinced she was a fairy girl, made Stella call her Yuri-chan before attending to her. Stella asked how many matches would be held, and Yuri replied that each student would have at least 10 matches. As Yuri was about to finish off with a corny chant, a bucket of tomato sauce spilled out of her face, and she collapsed. In the infirmary, she told Stella and Icky that she vomited a liter of tomato juice every day due to her health condition, and Icky told Stella that Yuri was the one who approved his enrollment into the school. Sometime later, Icky and Stella walked through the school campus, and he told her that he couldn't participate in classes the previous year due to the school's f***ed up system. Before she could ask more questions, Kagami jumped in and grabbed hold of Icky. She introduced herself as a huge fan of his while pressing his arm with her plots, and kissed his ass for several minutes before asking to feature him in her newspaper. Stella couldn't take any more of Kagami's shit, so she walked away like a jealous bitch, and when Icky tried to chase after her, he met his sister, Shizuku. Everyone, especially Stella, freaked out when Shizuku smooched Icky, and Kagami wasted no time to take pictures of that moment. Stella asked what was going on, so Shizuku explained that she'd lent some stuff in Alabama about how kissing siblings was a normal thing.
Okay.
Stella called Shizuku out on her crap, and they argued for a bit before Shizuku baited Stella into revealing her master-servant relationship with Icky. The students around lost their shit, and Kagami was ready to publish it as the next big scandal. Shizuku, however, didn't find it funny, and after making Ikki spill the beans, she summoned her sword, which she revealed had water powers, and threatened them with it. Stella was ready to stand on business, so she summoned hers as well. They mouthed off at each other before clashing swords and causing an explosion in the area. Stella and Shizuku were later summoned by Kurono, who revealed that it was illegal to deploy weapons in areas that weren't battlefields, so she made them clean the toilets in the academy as punishment. They exchanged insults all through their bathroom duty, and afterwards, they argued about who was closer to him. Shizuku then got serious and said that Stella had no idea what Ikki felt when he was treated like someone who didn't exist. Stella asked what she meant, but Shizuku said it wasn't her business and left. Sometime later, Shizuku arrived at her dorm, where a guy named Ari introduced himself as her roommate. Meanwhile, Stella waited for Ikki outside their dorm, and when he arrived, she asked about what Shizuku said. Ikki revealed that Ryuma, a samurai known for leading Japan to victory in a past war, was his grandfather and also his mentor. Ikki further explained that his family, the Kurogane family, was known for producing extraordinary blazers, but since he was a talentless loser, he was given the ghost treatment by his parents and relatives. He said that on a particular day, he realized he couldn't stand the loneliness anymore, so he ran away from home, but soon got lost in a heavy blizzard. At that point, he was prepared to die, but then he met his grandfather, who gave him a pep talk about how he shouldn't give up on himself. Ikki said his grandfather's words saved him, so he aimed to become strong, like his grandfather, and save people the same way Ryuma did. Ikki added that he trained alone for years until he enrolled at the academy and dropped a bombshell with the revelation that his family proved to be the ultimate haters when they created a talent-based system at the academy just so he wouldn't graduate. At the same time, Shizuku told Ari about how she loved her brother and how she detested her family for treating him like gutter trash. The next morning, Stella decided to get freaky as she stormed into the bathroom during Ikki's bath and demanded to scrub his back as part of her servant duties. As she scrubbed his body, Ikki couldn't keep his eyes off her dangling milkers. Stella made his day by rubbing his back with her gigantic melons, and when her underwear fell off, they both freaked out. A couple days later, Ikki and Stella had a sparring match outside the academy, and afterwards they sat on a nearby bench to have a chat. Stella told Ikki about how her first match of the selections, which was close by, was against a third year named Momo. But when Ikki tried telling her details about her opponent's fighting style, she stopped him and said she preferred going into fights blind so she could be prepared for battles against unknown blazers in the future. Stella stopped Ikki from walking away, but shriveled around like a drunk kitten as she tried to ask him for a date the following day. Her opportunity fell into the river when Shizuku sent a text to Ikki, inviting him to go shopping with her the following day. The next day, Ikki and Stella met up with Shizuku and Ari, and the girls immediately started another catfight. The guys introduced themselves to each other, and it didn't take long for Ikki to realize that Ari swung the other way. Sometime later, they went to an eatery where Stella and Shizuku enjoyed some crepes, which they owed to Ari for taking them there. Afterwards, they all fooled around for a bit before Ari met up with Ikki in the men's room, where they talked about Shizuku's antisocial personality. Just then, some armed criminals, who operated under the orders of a blazer named Bishao, stormed into the bathroom, and one of them shot holes through the entire room in an attempt to kill any witnesses. Ikki and Ari managed to escape through a portal Ari created, and on the outside, they decided to investigate the thugs that invaded the mall. Ari then summoned his weapon, which was a dagger that could manipulate shadows, and using it, he created a portal which they used to get back into the mall. Ikki got on a call with Kurono, who told him about the criminals before officially granting Ikki and the gang permission to use their weapons outside the school premises. Meanwhile, Stella and Shizuku were being held by the thugs, and they noticed the criminals were only targeting women and children. When a hot-headed asshole among the criminals assaulted a lady and tried offing her son with rapid gunfire, Stella stepped in and reduced the bullets to cinders. The thug tried filling her with holes, but his bullets couldn't get past her flame armor. Bishou stopped him and introduced himself to Stella, but when the hot-headed thug from earlier named Yakin told him about the lady and her son, Bishao pointed a gun to the lady's head and said he'd kill her as punishment for raising a disrespectful little twat. Stella then summoned her flame sword and tried to cut him in half, but he blocked her attack with his weapon and KO'd her ass with a brutal gut punch. Bishao explained that his weapon could absorb attacks and allow him to use his opponent's powers against them. He then asked her to make amends for what the boy did by stripping and groveling for him.
What?
And Ikki, who was watching by the corner, was about to lose it. But Ari calmed him down by reminding him that they'd be endangering the hostages if they made a move. Stella stripped herself to her underwear, and when Bishao asked her to take them off, Ikki decided it was time to f shit up. However, he was stopped by Ari, who manipulated his shadow so he couldn't move, before telling him to believe in Shizuku, who was cooking up a magical counter. Shizuku then unleashed a huge wave of water that protected the hostages, leaving the rest to Ikki, who summoned his blade, Intetsu. Bishao and his goons tried blasting him to hell, but Ikki used his Itoshura and moved so fast that everything around him stood still. In a split second, he analyzed his opponent and figured out his ability before leaping into action. He dodged the billions of bullets fired his way and cut off Bishao's arm with a secret technique he called Raikou. Ikki told Bishou that he couldn't do shit because his sword was way faster than him, and the perverted criminal tried ordering his goons to attack again but noticed Stella had already barbecued them. Ikki hugged it out with Stella, and Shizuku gave her back her clothes. But chaos didn't end there, as a strange lady suddenly jumped in and held a gun to a hostage's head before commanding them to release Bishao. However, she was swiftly taken out by the weapon of a guy named Shizuya. Ari said he couldn't sense Shizuya's presence, and Ikki greeted him since they knew each other from the past. A while later, Ikki met up with him while he was rizzing up a group of girls and thanked him for his help. Shizuya then called Ikki's power pathetic, and Stella was about to beat his ass before Ikki stopped her. Shizuya then reintroduced himself as a representative in the previous year's 7-star tournament, as he revealed that he was Ikki's first opponent in the current year's selections. On the first day of the selections, Stella faced off against Momo, whose combat gear made him look like an overweight knight in Game of Thrones.
Nice.
Momo knew he'd be literally cooked if he went into battle with the Flame Princess, so he threw in the towel after she threatened him. A while later, Ikki studied Shizuya's fighting style through a video where he obliterated his opponent and had a flashback of his previous encounter with the senior. Ikki congratulated Stella on her victory when she came back, and they discussed Shizuya's ability, which allowed him to completely conceal himself while attacking his opponents. Ikki added that Shizuya earned the nickname Hunter for his abilities, and told Stella that he was the worst possible match for him. He then cleansed her worries by revealing that he'd found a way to defeat him, and promised her that he definitely would. Ikki took a jog that evening, and while traumatized by his previous encounter with Shizuya, he decided he wouldn't lose no matter what, before meeting Ari at a stairway nearby. Ari brought up the bloody encounter Ikki had with Shizuya the previous year, so Ikki explained that his family tried to have him expelled back then, so they got Shizuya to bully him on a regular basis, knowing fully well that fighting back would be considered a crime. Ikki said he didn't get expelled because the torture, and Ari said he'd noticed that Ikki had become accustomed to pain since he'd endured it so much. Ikki didn't understand what Ari was yapping about, but Ari wished that Ikki would one day find someone that would care for him deeply. The next day, Ikki met a hotshot named Nini, who he identified as an elite who was given the nickname Demon Princess, and pointed out that she was a part-time teacher at the school. Nini pounced on him and tried inviting him to do some private lessons with her, but Kurono interrupted them and dragged her ass back to the commentary station where she was assigned. Minutes before the big battle with Shizuya, Ikki sat in the waiting room and thought about everything he'd gone through, resolving to win his battle against that dirtbag. But when the announcer revealed that it was time for his showdown, Ikki had a major panic attack. The commentator, Mangetsu, hyped up Shizuya and Ikki as they walked into the battlefield, and after a bit of tough talk from both competitors, the battle officially began. Shizuya summoned his weapon, which was a bow made of plants, and Ikki summoned Intetsu. Shizuya then covered the entire arena with trees and vanished into thin air before firing several arrows at Ikki. Ikki deflected the arrows and chased Shizuya after using his arrows to trace him down. Shizuya teased him, but Ikki defiantly told him to fire more arrows at him, so Shizuya went invisible again and decided to play a game where he'd tell Ikki the body part he was targeting before the arrow was fired. He informed Ikki of an arrow coming for his right knee, but before Ikki could do anything, it brutally injured him on that exact spot. He proceeded to blast several other of Ikki's limbs, while explaining that he figured out how to make his arrows invisible. After a brutal shot to the hand, Ikki fell to the ground, so Stella, Shizuku, and Ari worried for him. After watching her man take several more back shots from his opponent, Stella wondered why Ikki didn't use a quick attack to finish him off. Ari explained that Ikki couldn't do it because he was too nervous to pull it off. Shizuya mocked him while injuring him several more times with some arrows. Shizuya then delivered the most devilish backshot ever to Ikki and made everyone in the audience chant, "Worst one." But Stella snapped and loudly told them to shut the f*** up. She then turned to Ikki and gave him a pep talk about how he shouldn't give up, so Ikki stood up and punched himself in the face. Afterwards, he thanked Stella and gripped his sword confidently, while Shizuya continued throwing insults at him. Shizuya then threatened to fire Ikki's head next, but Ikki activated his Itoshura and did some Einstein-level calculations that allowed him to catch an invisible arrow and destroy it. Shizuya asked how Ikki could see his arrows, and Ikki said he couldn't see them but knew how he'd attack. Shizuya went bonkers and fired even more arrows at Ikki, which he easily destroyed before finding Shizuya. Nine explained in commentary that Ikki pulled it off due to his blade steel ability that allowed him to grasp Shizuya's thoughts, creating a new ability he called Perfect Vision. Shizuya desperately fired endless attacks at Ikki while running like a helpless coward, but Ikki destroyed all of them and ended the match by planting his sword just a millimeter away from Shizuya's face, which made the hunter crap his pants. Ikki declared the winner, and after glancing at Stella, he passed out from exhaustion. Ikki woke up on his bed several hours later, where he saw Stella dozing on top of him. When she woke up, Ikki confessed that he liked Stella, so she gave him a smooch on the cheek as a way to confess back. Ikki and Stella then promised each other that they would beat everyone in their path and face each other in the finals of the 7-star tournament. Ikki won his next set of matches, and eventually the students dropped the nickname Worst One since it didn't fit anymore, and began calling him Another One, which meant he was an uncrowned king. The next day, Ikki agreed to give sword training to a bunch of girls led by Kagami, and Stella, as well as the rest of the boys in the class, got jealous. A while later, Ikki met up with Stella at their dorm room, and she told him that helping those Blazer girls could end up backfiring. But Ikki said he didn't mind, as it could help them if they ever got in serious trouble. Stella then suggested that they start doing more lovey-dovey stuff since they'd been dating for 2 weeks, but she noticed Ikki was already in dreamland. The next day, Ikki trained Kagami and her girls, but they were interrupted by a bunch of jealous assholes from class who then tried to attack Ikki with their weapons. Ikki knocked them all down, using martial arts skills he learned from the drunken master, and afterwards, they begged him to take them under his wing as well. Shizuku and Stella showed up to his training ground, and after horsing around a bit, Shizuku asked to join Ikki's training group, so he agreed. When Stella asked to join as well, Ikki got surprised, so Stella stormed off in her usual jealous fashion, but eventually met Ari, who was gushing over some crappy dating game. A while later, Ikki met up with her in her dorm room and invited her to join a swimming trip with his training group the following day. When they got to the swimming resort, everyone got into their swimsuits, and Ikki used the pool as the medium to train his students. Stella, who was watching from afar, decided to let go of her envy as she went underwater and concentrated, hoping to reach Ikki's level, but she was interrupted by Kagami, who asked if she and Ikki had boned. Stella tried to deny the claims of dating, but Kagami gaslighted her into spilling the beans. Kagami said she wanted the best for their relationship and repeated her previous question, but Stella confessed that they hadn't even had a proper kiss yet. Stella was feeling down about it, so Kagami motivated her to take the extra step and ask him to do lovey-dovey stuffs with her, before running off to call him. Ikki met up with Stella, and they had a heated argument about how they'd both been dumbasses for the past 2 weeks before sharing their first kiss. They held hands on their way home, but they soon got notifications that their next opponents were student council members. Ikki faced off against a student council member named Ren, and as she dashed around the battlefield at the speed of sound. When she tried to hit her killer move, Ikki dodged and swiftly brought her down. At the same time, Stella faced off against another student council member named Ika, whose blade could accumulate power. He tried attacking her with all his stored power, but she easily destroyed his weapon and claimed the victory. The duo met up with Shizuku and Ari after their matches, and after goofing off a bit, they noticed a weird emo girl was stalking Ikki. Ikki approached her, so she freaked out and ran away, but ended up falling into the pool. A while later, they visited her at the infirmary, and she introduced herself as a third-year named Ayase. Ikki got excited after she revealed herself to be the daughter of a guy named Kaito, who Shizuku revealed was a well-known and powerful swordsman, despite not being a blazer. Ayase revealed that her father was hospitalized after an accident during a match. She said she was stalking Ikki because she needed swordsmanship tips since she wasn't making progress in learning her father's style. She apologized for her stalking, and Ikki asked her to join him in training. A while later, Ikki sparred with Ayase, but he noticed that despite her solid foundation, she lacked something, so he stopped the match. He explained to her that she was failing her father's techniques because she was copying him and went further to clarify that she was a different gender, so she didn't have the build to replicate his attacks. Ikki offered to teach her the correct form, and she agreed, so he told her to make a stance. In an attempt to correct her position, Ikki made intense contact with her thighs, and Ikki's girls freaked out, but not more than Ayase herself. Afterwards, Ayase took the correct stance, and when Ikki tried to attack her, she stopped him with an elegant block, which impressed everyone. That evening, Ayase told Ikki that she wanted to become strong enough to participate in the 7-star tournament, so she asked him to be her tutor, starting from the next day. After several days of training with Ikki and Stella, Ayase met up with them to have dinner at an eatery. Ikki promised her that she'd get stronger in due time, but she hinted that she needed to gain strength quickly to get back something that was stolen from her. Their little party was interrupted by a gangster named Kura and his thugs, who mocked Ayase before Ikki told them to butt off.
What do you mean by that?
On realizing that Ikki was a swordsman, Kuro pretended to be friendly, but shattered a glass bottle on his head when he let his guard down. Kura said he loved crushing swordsmen and challenged Ikki to a fight. Stella was ready to reduce the entire building to cinders if it meant roasting Kura, but Ikki stopped her and claimed that Kura slipped his hand. Kura's thugs mocked Ikki for being a worthless coward, but Ikki didn't retaliate, not even when Kura spit in his face. The ruffians decided Ikki wasn't worth it, so they left. Ikki told Stella and Ayase that he refused to dodge their assaults or fight back because he didn't want to get expelled. Stella then implied that Ikki could beat them up without having to use Intetsu, but Ikki disagreed, saying that Kura was really strong. A weird guy named Utah appeared and commended Ikki for keeping his cool during the assault before revealing that Kura was within the top 8 bracket of the previous 7-star tournament. Another sudden guest, this time a lady named Kanata, who was stupidly carrying an umbrella indoors, said she'd have held them accountable if Ikki used his weapon. Stella wondered who they were, so Ikki introduced Utah and Kanata as Hagen Academy's student council treasurer and vice president respectively. As Ikki, Stella, and Ayase walked back to the academy, Ikki asked if Ayase was in trouble. But before she could answer, they both got an email that revealed that they were scheduled to face off against each other in a selections match soon, so Ayase ran off. The next evening, Ikki told Ari about how he hadn't seen Ayase all day, and Ari brought up how her goal was to get selected for the 7-star tournament, implying that she'd make a move before their match to take Ikki down. Ikki told him that she'd asked to meet with him at the rooftop, and Ari speculated that it could be a trap, but the airhead doubted. That night, Ikki met up with Ayase on the rooftop, and she had a weirdly devious smile on her face. There she trash-talked him before using her sword's ability to take a leap off the roof. Ikki used his Itoshura to save her from the fall, and afterwards, she revealed that she played him into using his trump card, which only worked once a day, knowing their match was coming up soon. The next morning, Ikki woke up exhausted, but he was summoned by Kurono, who intended to punish him for the wreckage caused when he saved Ayase. When he asked Kurono about Ayase, she told him about how Kaito lost a duel to Kura 2 years prior, which made him lose everything he had, including his consciousness. Meanwhile, Ayase visited her father in the hospital and swore to the unconscious deadbeat that she'd beat Kura in the 7-star tournament and win back everything they lost. A while later, the spectators gathered at the arena for their match, and the competitors, Ikki and Ayase, arrived as well. Ikki tried to attack her, but found out very painfully that she had the ability to attack with slashes she'd left around the battlefield as traps. Ayase attacked Ikki relentlessly with the intention of finishing the match before she got caught cheating, but Ikki managed to block her brutal spams. Ikki remembered how prior to the match, he begged Yuri to overlook Ayase's cheating because he intended to get through to her. Ikki then swore to help her regain her pride before dodging all her slashes and taking her down. Ikki was declared the winner, and Ayase decided to give up on everything, but Ikki offered to help her, and she accepted while crying like a little bitch. A while later, Stella told Ayase and Ikki about how Kura was known for raiding schools and stealing dojos, and Ayase narrated how Kura beat her dad's ass without using his special weapon. Ayase took them to her former home where Ikki challenged Kura to a duel for the property. When the match began, Kura wasted no time before attacking him relentlessly with his snake-like sword. Ikki evaded his moves and tried landing an attack, but Kura countered quickly. Ikki realized that Kura had an extraordinary reaction speed and swore to surpass that superhuman trait of Kura's. Afterwards, Ikki blocked a barrage of super-fast attacks by Kura but was eventually put on the ropes again. Ayase and Stella noticed that Ikki was enjoying himself as he brawled with Kura, and Ayase broke down in tears when she realized her father was excited in a similar way during his match with Kura. Ikki once again swore to bring back everything Ayase lost before using Kaido's secret technique to bypass Kura's attacks and take him down. Ayase realized that Ikki had used Blade Steel to learn the move during their sparring matches. As Kura left, he promised Ikki they'd finish their battle at the 7-star tournament before handing them the dojo. Ikki told Ayase that the only reason he won was because she'd memorized her father's technique, so she swore to get stronger. The next day, Ikki and Stella discussed how Ayase was suspended after reporting her fraudulent actions to the school, and they eventually got a text from her revealing that her father had regained consciousness. Over the next couple of days, Ikki beat several other jackasses in the selections, and afterwards, he and Stella made their way to a training camp, which Kurono set up for them. Ikki and Stella met up with the student council members at the location and hung out with them. The Lovebirds eventually joined council members to do some cleaning, which they said was in preparation for an upcoming training camp for the school's representatives. Eventually, Ikki and Stella went off into the nearby mountain area, where Ikki noticed that Stella had caught a cold. Ikki took her to a mountain lodge to warm her up, and he nearly lost his mind as he took off her wet clothes. After he covered her with a blanket, she noticed his Excalibur had awoken.
What? What the fuck?
Stella then asked him to do it with her, but he rambled some dumb shit about how he wanted to preserve her pride, so she thanked him, but felt like a whore afterwards. Meanwhile, Shizuku met up with her father Itsuki and acted like a spoiled little brat before he claimed to be proud of her for winning her selection matches. She didn't give a damn about his praises, so she yelled at him for ignoring Ikki before leaving. Elsewhere, Ikki and Stella were attacked by some giant rock golems. Ikki tried to fight back, but he was outnumbered after the golems regenerated and Stella was in trouble. The student council then made a dramatic entrance and fought them off to save Stella, but they eventually got cornered as well. They realized the golems were being controlled by a blazer before the student council president, Tuka, made a surprise entrance and obliterated the golems, as well as their master, with her lightning attacks. Ikki identified her as a top 4 candidate from the previous year's tournament and Hagen Academy's strongest knight. Meanwhile, Shizuku got an email and was shocked to see that her next opponent was none other than Tuka. Several days later, Ikki and Stella told Ari about the golem incident, and he told them that Stella was fighting other lighting-based blazers at the academy in preparation for her match with Tuka. A while later, Ari told Shizuku that Ikki and Stella were worried about him, and Shizuku swore that she'd defeat Tuka and get stronger so her brother would acknowledge her. Hours later, Shizuku and Tuka stepped into the battlefield, and they both summoned their swords. As the match officially began, both competitors hesitated to attack, while Ikki told Ari and Stella about Tuka's ultimate move called Raikiri, which she could use to blitz any opponent. Shizuku then started attacking relentlessly with her water magic, but Tuka countered with strokes of lighting while charging towards her. Shizuku managed to hold Tuka back with some ice, but Tuka destroyed the ice, and the commentators said the two fighters were at the same level. Tuka then obliterated a water clone of Shizuku's and changed at her relentlessly. Ikki and the gang noticed that Tuka was using a special technique to move faster than Shizuku's brain could perceive. Ikki noticed that Nine used a similar move, so Kurono revealed to him that Nine and Tuka were trained by the same legendary knight. After a bit of motivation from Stella, Shizuku started attacking relentlessly with ice-based moves and eventually covered the entire battlefield with mist. Shizuku then created a powerful sword with her water magic, but before she could strike, Tuka used her lightning-fast slash to put her incest-loving ass to sleep. A while later, Ikki told Stella that he was amazed by how much stronger Shizuku had gotten, while Shizuku bawled her eyes out in Ari's arms. Meanwhile, Itsuki got news of Shizuku's defeat and told a fat-ass associate of his named Akaza to move forward with their plans. Some days later, Stella obliterated another opponent and later met up with Ikki. She reminded him of their promise, and they shared a kiss, unknown to them that some creep was taking photos.
Nice.
A while later, Kureno informed Ikki that Akaza was making moves within the academy, and Ikki got worried, but Kureno promised to protect him. Afterwards, Ikki and Stella visited the student council room, where they saw that Tuka was actually a clumsy dumbass. While having fun with some kids in the yard, Tuka told Ikki about her noble art, which allows her to read the brain signals of her opponents and foresee their moves. Yuta later told Ikki about how Tuka helped a lot of people, and Ikki realized the source of her power was her will to help others. That evening, Ikki and Stella freaked out after getting word that their relationship had been publicized, and Akaza showed up to invite Ikki for a meeting with the Morals Committee. In the committee courtroom, Ikki was interrogated, and despite his claims to love Stella, they put him in a highly advanced holding cell. Ikki had several of his selection matches within the committee building and was exhausted before Yuri snuck him a secret envelope. He saw a lock of Stella's hair within the envelope and got motivated, so he demanded to see his father, who was the head of the Morals Committee. With a bit of help from Kurono, Ikki met up with Itsuki and tried to tell his dad about his strength, but Itsuki called him a worthless piece of dog shit, and those words broke him.
Man, I'm dead.
After defeating several other competitors, Ikki was informed that his final opponent would be Tuka, and Akaza stipulated that if he won, he'd gain his freedom, but losing would mean he'd give up on becoming a knight. Soon, everyone heard that Ikki would be fighting Tuka the next day, and Tuka said she'd go all out if he faced her, despite his poor physical condition, before suggesting that Shizuku convince him to withdraw from the fight. On the final day of the selections, the commentators announced that the matches would be broadcasted on live TV. It was then announced that Ikki had 15 minutes to arrive at the arena before getting disqualified. The sleazy bastard. Akaza told Kurono and Nin that Ikki was making his way to the academy by road. Ikki mustered every last bit of energy he had left and arrived at the academy, where he was motivated by Shizuku as well as the students he trained. He got the ultimate stroke of motivation when Stella informed him that she'd qualified for the 7-star tournament. Ikki and Tuka arrived at the battlefield, where Tuka told him that she'd be going all out before summoning her weapon. Ikki summoned his own weapon and swore to defeat her. The match began, and Ikki immediately used his Ito Shura. Tuka activated her most powerful Raikiri slash, and Ikki charged at her while putting everything he had into a 1-second Raikou slash. Ikki stood victorious over an unconscious Tuka and was declared the winner. He struggled to stay conscious, and Akaza tried to jump him, but got kicked off by Stella. Stella embraced Ikki passionately, and in front of everyone at the arena, Ikki proposed to Stella. With tears in her eyes, Stella agreed to be his bride, so they shared a kiss. Meanwhile, Stella's father, the Emperor of the Vermilion Empire, called Itsuki and warned him not to meddle with Ikki and Stella's lives anymore. Sometime later, the 6 representatives of Hagen Academy were officially announced, and Tuka informed everyone that Ikki was the group's captain before giving him some encouraging words. Ikki and Stella later met up with Shizuku and Ari, and they goofed off in their usual manner. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more awesome videos. See you next time, guys.